Hi everyone, welcome to the Mekong sessions. You can see me and hear me well? Okay, so yeah. Now I would like to share my screen and start the sessions. Okay, welcome to the Mekong sessions. So my name is Paradis. I'm going to be the facilitator and support these sessions until 4 o'clock at the time in Australia, and it's 12 o'clock in the Mekong time. So before we start our session, I would like to give you some introduction to the platform that we are going to use. So first, there is a profile session. So we encourage you to use the photo and the name and your position and organization. So it would be great for the people to recognize you and go around to talk to you. And if you want to see the agenda, so there is the icon on the top right over here. So you can click on that icon and you will see that top right here, and you will see the agenda on that screen. And if you wish to swap between the session, in the Mekong session and the main session, we have the banner over here. So the one here is the Mekong session. If you wish to go to the main conference, so you click on the eWater logo on your left-hand side here, and you go to the main session, and you do the same in the main session. If you want to go to Mekong session, you can click on this banner and you come back to this session. And we encourage you to move around the table so you can meet the people that you know before. It can be your old friend, you can be your old colleagues, so go around and catch up with them and say hello to them. And in order to do that, you go to the table with the empty seat, you double click on it, and you are in that table. And when you talk on that table, you are in that table only, so the other people might not hear you. So you are also encouraged to catch up one-on-one in the table that have 2 seats. So if you have any problem with the tool, audio video issue, you can go to Remo. So there is the icon Remo on your left-hand side, and you click on that, you get the support link. So we encourage you to maximize the presentation, which I will do it soon, and to get a bigger view of the presentation. So if you have any question you would like to ask to the presenter or to the forum, please do it in Q&A sessions. And you have the chat session that you can exchange the message with your colleague and your friend. But the Q&A, we prefer you do it in the Q&A session. So turn on the camera and try to go around the table and say hello to your old friend and colleague. And yeah, so here is our speaker for the Mekong session. We will start with Dr. Robert Carr, the CEO of MRC. He will deliver a welcome remark to our session. And then we will follow up with Dr. Geoff and Juanita Moolman. They will jointly present about the capability of and functionality of source, MUSICX, and urban developer. Then we have Mr. Virak from World Bank. He will talk about the role of water resource modeling in the catchment assessment for the case of Cambodia. And then His Excellency Mr. Watput Kusal from Cambodia National Mekong Committee will give a presentation on the development of the national decision support system in Cambodia and how to use the DSS for the water resources plan in the country. The last 2 presentations will be from the Mekong River Commission Secretariat. We have Mr. Ratikon Sayasan. He will talk about the modeling for the impact assessment for the Mekong River flow sediment regime, and water quality. So he will talk about the modeling framework in the MRC Council study. Last but not least, we have Dr. Vinay Vanipol, also from the MRCS. He will talk about flagship project in MRC, which is the reintegration of the MRC data, information, modeling, forecasting, and communication platform. And without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Robert Carr, CEO of the eWater, to give a welcome remark for this session. Dr. Robert Carr, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you, Paradis. We welcome all. Interesting new world, isn't it? But here we are. Paradis, thank you for appointing me the CEO of the MRC. I will have to speak to Hatta about that, but I'm sure he will be fine. Okay, everybody. My job is just to welcome you to the session. It's good to see so many of our old friends here. It's a pity we can't meet in person, but hopefully within a few months we'll be able to come visit you again and continue our work with you. I'm going to share my screen now, and I have to click on that, and then I have to click on that. Here we go. Okay, I hope you can see that. So an introduction to eWater and the purpose of modelling into supporting water management. Just a little bit about eWater. Things, as you may have heard if you joined the main session yesterday, eWater is a government-owned, not-for-profit organisation. We were owned by only the Murray-Darling Basin states in recent times, but in 2020, this year, we have welcomed Tasmania as another owner of eWater, and shortly we expect to add the Northern Territory, which will make eWater unique as an organisation owned by all Australian governments. Why is this important? It's important because arrangements with eWater are a pathway to access to our shared collective knowledge for managing water resources across our wide brown land without droughts and flooding rains. So eWater, arrangements with eWater are effectively arrangements with all the capabilities across all the state and Commonwealth governments of Australia. We are not a government department. We are a government-owned organisation, and our mission, as you can see, is to support the environmentally sustainable use of water in Australia and around the world, which, of course, very much includes the Mekong, through the very long history of Australia through MOUs and our presence in supporting water resources management in the Mekong. I've often talked about, or many of you heard me talk about the water information ladder. And Australian tools are designed to help you climb this information ladder. We are still working on it. It's a journey. And as technology changes and improves, you have to keep restarting the journey. But this is a summary of how we see it working. We go from data collection, and now we have satellite imagery. We bring them together and we can make very nice data reports with consistency and repeatability. The integration of the data sets with QA/QC reporting is something the MRCS has done for a long time and the member countries. But getting there with the new data centres that are coming along in Laos and Cambodia is something that will bring you that consistency and repeatability. What modelling does is bring the data and the knowledge together. So models are simply representations, mathematical representations of what we believe to be the physical basis or the conceptual basis of how water moves in both quantity and quality around the river system. And when you put the data into it, the model then becomes alive as a representation of that river. The modern terminology for that is the digital twin, where the data is so good and the model is so good that it actually represents very closely exactly what is going on in the river. In the case of very large systems like the Mekong, of course, we're a long way from that, but it can help us with understanding. Then we can use the model to plan, look at scenarios. We can then generate reporting across the basins, and not only just data, but derived information that comes out of the models. And the ultimate goal is forecasting. There is a saying that if you can't forecast, you can't operate. So the operation of the system requires on an excellently calibrated and reliable model, combined with the ability to forecast. And this, of course, is one of the goals of the MRCS. I guess we will hear from Winai about how the reinvigoration strategy is taking us along this path. Why do we need models then? Well, models integrate data and knowledge in a continuous cycle. We are always getting new data. I was involved in a land and environment court case many years ago, and the barrister said to me, you know, the trouble with you guys is every time it rains, you change your mind. Because we get new data and therefore the statistics change and our understanding changes. But that's the nature of the world we live in as hydrologists. So more data, new knowledge, you have to keep updating. The models, however, are transparent and repeatable. You press the button, it runs, it gives you the same answer. So you can start to understand how things relate to each other. And although there may be nonlinear systems in there, the model will repeat the same analysis. You can use them stochastically by putting in a range of inputs and generating a range of outputs, but the underlying models have to be transparent and repeatable. Otherwise, you don't have those physical processes represented in a scientifically sound way. You can use models to identify areas where you have information gaps, and if you have better information, how much better will your answer be? This is done through typically sensitivity analysis or stochastic analysis, and helps you guide your data collection to improve the quality of the models and therefore the quality of the analysis. You can explore and compare scenarios. What if I put a dam here? What if I increase irrigation there? Models are excellent for comparing the impacts of different scenarios, which of course goes into basin planning. You can express the impacts, and also you can assess uncertainty. It's surprising how many things that we think might produce uncertain results within the complexity of the model and the behaviour of the systems actually wash out and are not so. The uncertainty in the inputs is not as great. It doesn't have as great a impact on the outputs as we might think. The most important thing about models is you can quantify the implications of choice, and using them to go out to the communities to show them what is the implication of certain choices as part of the stakeholder engagement part of basin planning is absolutely critical, and is a foundation of how Australia goes about its basin planning processes. If you've seen some of the papers in the main sessions over yesterday and going on today, you can see that models underpin the planning of wastewater, water quality, irrigation systems, all kinds of things in Australia. And we are very keen to support the Mekong in the same process. So while source has been provided to the Mekong River Commission Secretariat via the Memorandum of Understanding with the MBBA since 2012, in September 2020, we took it a bit further with the Government of Australia through our Ambassador, His Excellency, Mr. Pablo Kang. We offered access to eWater source to the Government of Cambodia, the Ministry of Water Resources and Meteorology. This is a photo from that ceremony. The offer was warmly received by the Minister for Moram, His Excellency Mr. Lim Kian Ho, and is reflective of Australia's ongoing commitment to support sustainable management of water resources in Cambodia. Of course, software alone is not in itself useful, so we are in conversation with DFAT and MORAM around a wide range of capacity building and support programs to back up the offer to improve water management across Cambodia. So as I say, a relationship with eWater is a relationship with Australia, and we want to continue that positive support for the Mekong, and we look very much forward to a really interesting session here today and many years of fruitful cooperation going forward. So thank you, and back to you, Paradis.
Thank you very much, Robert, for very insightful presentations. And now I would like to invite Juanita. I would like to invite Dr. Geoffrey Adams to give and jointly present with Juanita Moolman on the capability and functionality of source MUSICX and urban developer. Dr. Geoffrey Adams is the experienced hydrologist, water system modeler, model developer, water system operator, water system manager with over 35 years of experience in this field. Geoffrey Adams is currently the executive manager of the project at eWater. Juanita is the hydrologist and spatial scientist with 27 years of experience, and in the field, in several fields that include the water resource modeling and network design. She has been working in the South African Department of Water Affairs for more than 24 years. So, Dr. Geoffrey Adams and Juanita, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paradis. Good morning, everyone in the Mekong, and good afternoon to people not in the Mekong. So this presentation follows on from part of Robert Carr's welcome speech yesterday morning, where he introduced this concept of integrated urban modelling. And so I'll just elaborate on that a bit more, and then Juanita will give a case study. And if I'm not advance the slides, no, it didn't work.
You might have to stop sharing your screen and go back. Yeah. Try that one.
Might just get another keyboard. Okay, we've got a spare keyboard.
We'll be back with you in a moment.
You just click on that.
You click on this screen.
I was clicking on it.
It's
Computer. That computer there.
Ah, okay.
Yes, there we are now. Good.
Oh, right. Okay.
You chose the wrong screen. Thanks, Paradis.
Good thing we all came in. So, apologies for that interruption. We couldn't work out how to advance the presentation. So, I won't go verbosely through this slide. I'll just highlight the main issues. So, one of the issues that we find in Australia is that population growth is driving demand, and being a water resource poor country, we do have issues ensuring that we have enough supply for our growing large urban centres. So our capital cities, for example. That's quite important. People are becoming more aware of the environment that they live within, and they have an interest in supporting a green city. With increasing densification of urban population, flooding becomes a greater issue because the denser dwellings and so on have more impervious area, and the floods come off much quicker. And so we have this issue where, with the growing population and changing climate, we recognise that we have trouble securing our long-term water security. So that's the general background of the problem that we are trying to analyse and manage. So eWater has 3 products which until now have been separate products, and each can be individually used to analyse a part of the urban water cycle. So commencing with source, it has traditionally been used for bulk water system analysis, whether it be for irrigation or urban water supply. For managing the urban water quality, we have now MUSICX. And for small scale integrated water cycle management, we have Urban Developer. And we'll go into each of those in a little bit more detail very shortly. Now, however, we have integrated the 3 models, and we have different ways of integrating. So we've got the first one, which is the source bulk water supply system. What's featured here is what we call a schematic model, where we just apply nodes and links and link them up, and then the mathematics takes care of the rest, the water balance mathematics. But we can also do it as rainfall runoff models with the same underlying water flows, but generating the inflows from rainfall runoff models rather than using historical data files. And this is where we get into the Urban Developer water management. So what we have here is a picture of a representation of what an individual lot, or perhaps a small group of lots, might look like in terms of the water cycle. So we have different types of demand within a household. You have bathroom, shower demand, washing machine, laundry demand, kitchen demand, toilet flushing demand, and perhaps garden demand. And the water can come from different sources. It can come from a reservoir in the catchment. In the more modern context, it can come from a desalination plant. There is often groundwater support. We are now more often recycling wastewater, and we are now also more often using rainwater. And then we have potentially small scale storage. We have overflows. So the water can end up back in the waterway, and then from there it can end up back as part of the water supply for somewhere further downstream. So that's a simple representation of the flows of water that can occur in an urban area at a small scale. And it interacts with the larger scale, potentially larger scale model at this point. Everything else can be modelled on a smaller scale. And as I said earlier, Juanita will give you a case study of that at the end of this presentation. So the idea of Urban Developer is that it generates the net household demand, taking into account use of grey water, which is, say, shower water, potentially wastewater, which is, say, from the toilet, and potentially rainwater. And also you can incorporate stormwater off the street as well, especially if you intercept it in the wetland. And so you end up with a schematic type model of a small scale water supply, water demand situation in an urban area. And you can have a large range of pictures representing different types of household. And these are called templates. So you can have units and houses and different populations of house. Your different appliances can have different water efficiencies, and these can change with time. So we have done work where we have changed the efficiencies with time to get an understanding of how the water security will vary into the future. And then with music, we start to look at the rainfall runoff and the water quality, and how we can manage the water quality of stormwater runoff within the urban area, within the urban system, so that we can make sure that the creeks and the lakes within the urban environment are much healthier than they have been in the past. And so we can integrate these three tools into one model. We can either have the three tools as separate scenarios, interlinked scenarios within the model, or we can also have some components of, say, urban developer directly represented within a source model. But the way the whole system is set up, you can have a small scale urban developer scenario, and it will directly link into a demand or potentially an inflow in a larger scale source model, which represents the upper catchment as well as the urban area. And similarly with the MUSICX, it can mean supply information to the larger scale source model about the urban runoff, because the urban areas are increasingly seen as part of the catchment as well. And so within this large catchment model, we can now have small scale urban representations of the detailed water flows within the urban area, which at a larger scale is only part of the large catchment, but it is an important part hydrology-wise of the total water cycle within that larger catchment. So Juanita will now give a case study of something that she finished Friday, I think.
Thanks, Geoff. Okay, well, we'll just show you what we have managed to do here at eWater using the Urban Developer plugin. And this is an example from the state of Victoria that was done for the city of Geelong. They were interested in understanding into the future what the water security will be, so they needed to get an idea of future demands at various suburbs of the city. So the Urban Developer plugin will actually allow the modeler, as Geoff mentioned already, it allows us to integrate our detailed urban water demand modeling scenarios with our whole of system source scenarios. So when you load the Urban Developer plugin, it gives you the ability to create a number of, so on the left-hand side here, we have a number of urban developer scenarios. The top scenario is the familiar source scenario, and then a number of urban developer scenarios or templates which carry the information about the different appliances and how much water use will be generated within a typical household type, for example, a typical apartment or a typical detached property. And we're also modeling, in this example, we also model water, the use of rainwater tanks. So in your source model, you would create an urban demand on a source water user node, and then that gives one, hooks in with the outputs. So the outputs from these scenarios will hook into the urban developer node. So the time series of the appliance end use, we call it the end use, so the amount of the water used by each appliance per occupant, per household type, will be generated in the urban developer scenario and then combined into the source scenario with the various other components of urban demand as well, such as non-residential water use. And that can give one a breakdown of the typical water use in an area or in a part of your city or in the total city. So you can work out how much water would be used by showers, taps, toilets, for example, washing machines. There's a non-residential component to the urban demand. There is an outdoor component to urban demand. And of course, importantly, there is an evaporative cooler component to urban demand as well. And so the Urban Developer plugin allows us to model all of these components, and we can then, once we've got these components, we can model the impact of any changes that we make in these components on the bulk demands as a result of, if we have changes because of climate change, changes because of population growth, or just changes because of increased efficiency of the appliances that we're using. And one can also customize the urban developer, the appliances according to the specific appliances that are used in a specific part of the world. So having these components then makes it possible to impact the changes of your bulk water demands as a result of climate change, population growth, improved efficiency, as I mentioned. And this is the example of what we modelled in the state of Victoria, in the city of Geelong. And the interesting result was we modelled population growth for the years of 2040 up to 2065, as well as including a climate change aspect, in that it was expected that the weather will become drier and hotter. And we also had modelled changes in appliance efficiency. And in this example, you can actually see that there are times of the year when the improved efficiency of the appliances that are being used will offset the impacts of population growth and climate change, especially in a low population growth scenario with minimal climate change up to 2040. And that was just my example. If anybody would like to know anything more about how to use Urban Developer, Geoff and I are still online, so you're welcome to ask us any questions. Paradis, I'll pass it back to you now.
Thank you, Juanita.
Okay, Paradis, I might have to ask you to take us back because we're not quite so easily getting there. We are. Stop sharing.
You are still online with Geoff. So we got a question from one upon our loud friends. So he would like to ask about how music model can be applied in the Mekong regions, as the input of this model seem to be based on the guideline in Australia.
Think about that. One aspect of it is certainly based on Australian guidelines, but that's really to do with the regulatory component. So you wouldn't need to apply the Australian regulatory framework to the Mekong. And music is being used in other overseas countries with different regulatory framework because the underpinning science is valid. It's just that you might have different limits and different objectives.
Great, thank you, Geoff and Juanita. Another question on the MUSICX, and it is from Choose-It. So how the MUSICX can deal with the pipe or sewage system?
It's not really designed as a pipe network analysis tool. So if that's what you're looking for, that's not its purpose. Its underlying design allows you to do a little bit of that. So if you just have downstream flows, it can handle that and do the mixing and so on. But if you're talking about a fully pressurized pipe network, it's not designed for that purpose. It will manage the water, it will model the water quality and so on, though, and the flows in a downhill flowing system.
Yeah, thank you, Geoff. I think Choose-It can follow up with Geoff and Juanita offline about your technical questions. Now, next, I would like to move to the case study in the Mekong. So I would like to invite Mr. Virak from World Bank to give a presentation on the role of the water resources modeling in the catchment of Cambodia. Mr. Virak is a water resource management specialist at the World Bank Group based in Cambodia. He has been working over 10 years on several water-related projects in Southeast Asia that include Cambodia, Laos, PDR, and Vietnam. His main expertise comprise of the water governance, IWRM, capacity building, research, governance, and project development. So, Mr. Virak, please.
Thank you, Sir Dr. Paradis for the invitation. But do you see my slide presentation right now?
Very well, yeah.
Hello?
Hello, yes, we can hear you and see your slide.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for the introduction as well. So again, my name is Virak Chan. I'm the Water Resource Management Specialist. I'm also a task team leader for Mekong Integrated Water Resource Management Phase 3 in Cambodia, is working with Excellency Vatmut Kosal, and some part also working with the colleague from MOC as well. So today I'm not really presenting the Mekong projects that I'm responsible for, but there's one case study or one assessment that we just completed to really looking at the power of the modeling work that could have informed the water supply investments opportunity or decisions. So I will walk you through this, but before I walk you through, just confirm that I'm not really a modeler. So some language was not really, it's kind of like make your ear sounds the music on the modeling work, but I hope that I try my best to present the case study here. Sorry. So the study is called Catchment Assessment for Stung Stone. It's one of the river stream connecting to the Tonle Sap basins as well. Part of the Stung Genus, they call it the sub-river basins of the Tonle Sap. So the purpose of having this assessment is really, it's kind of a collaboration between eWater and also Institute of Technology of Cambodia as well, to look into the aspect of the water sharing between the water supply for agriculture and also water supply for domestic water use. I don't know how to move the slide.
You can just move your mouse over the full screen mode and then click on it.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Do you see the next slide?
Not yet. Don't operate it on the share screen, on your actual screen one.
Okay. Let me try again. Okay, so before I go into the detail of like what is the modeling and how we use the modeling, I just want to show you some movie that you have, most of you have been watched already. If you heard about superhero, I think most of you have watched Spider-Man, right? So it's quite famous. Even
you are not full screen mode.
Sorry, I'm not on the full screen mode. Hang on, I'm trying to. Here you go. Do you see?
Not yet.
Okay. I don't know how to do it. Hang on. Probably let me try to share it again. I don't know what happened.
want, I can also do it from here, and then I let you talk.
Okay, that would be helpful. I don't know, it's stuck on my screen now.
Yep. So can everyone see the screen now?
Yes, we can say Paradis.
Yep, great.
Can you move? Yeah, that's slide. Yeah, thank you, Paradis. I will walk this through from here. As you've seen, like many of you has watched a Spider-Man as a superhero movie, right? So a lot of kids like it, and then it's quite famous, right? And then we have another superhero actors as Iron Man, Hulk, Batman's, Thor's, Captain America, Black Panthers, and Ant-Man. So if you look at these guys, like, so you have heard a number of the movie, right? So they play in the different movie, and you feel very excited and very impressed with their powers in a different way. When you watch Spider-Man, you see Spider-Man is fabulous. But the point here that I just want to make, it's similar to the model that we are right now having. It's not just eWater, but if I heard, I'm not the modeler, but I keep hearing a lot about different applications for modeling. So they all have a different uniqueness and different functions that could help run the modeling. But the question is like, why we choose this? Why we like this model, right? So a lot of people say this model is very good and this one is better and this one is the best. But how we use the model for, and what this model can be used for, it is the big questions that I'm going to move to the next PowerPoint, and I will try to explain to you. So the model have a different functions and have different power to address the issues, to identify the scenario in a different purposes, and responding to the demand, for example, for water, and demand by many other sectors. So finally, if you are talking about the superhero movie, finally the producers produced one a movie called Avenger, which trying to bring all the superhero together to work out together to share the same goal, right? So even though they have a different functions, different powers, but then they can really have a one goal together in order to protect the planets. Similar to the situation of the modeling, right? So the modeler and the model that has been produced. So what can those models could really work out together, and also trying to complement from one to another to respond to the issues of for example, climate change, flood management issues, drought management issues, and providing the possible solutions to the decision makers and also to the policy maker as well, for them to really see, okay, this is really the reality, this is really the scientific proof that they can make the right decisions. Could the model really kind of like work together and bring, especially line agency, who's normally kind of like trying to look at the different angle, even they are have the same challenge in the same basins, but then they look at the angle from their own perspective, look at the angle from their own sector. How can the model could really create the respects, create unity and the willingness for all those line agency or line sector, intersectoral issue together to solve the problem for the people. So this is the question I just leave here as a foundation about how the model could really beneficial for a future assessment, but at the same time for policymakers. Can you move to the next slide? All right, so as many of you know, I think it's not really different from one country to another. I'm just talking about Cambodia's government institutions, especially I'm talking about the ministry that has been involved or have the water aspect related, right? So they have so many crowded ministries have their own role. For example, I'm talking about water resource management. MORAM have a mandate, have a responsibility to ensure that the water resource is conserved, protected, and distribute or supplies to the demand for water. So I'm talking here, for example, apart from Ministry of Water Resource, we also have Ministry of Mine and Energy. They also need water for energy productions. Ministry of Rural Development, they are working on water supply and sanitation, make sure that they can provide improved water supply to populations. We have a Ministry of Industry, Science, Technology, and Innovation, just changed recently changed the name. They also have the Directorate of the potable water supply as well. And now they are facing the water shortage, source shortage in many areas of where the water utility located. And Ministry of Agriculture, they also requires the water for fishery, for agriculture activity, and so on. Same thing as the Environment Ministry as well. They need water for forest protections, conservations, and pollution control, for example. At the same time, we have colleagues from CNMC and MOC here to trying to support in the sense of how to ensure sustainable water resource management in the Mekong basins in the riparian country, for example, Cambodia, one of them. So how those ministries could really playing a role together and trying to understand what is the demand, what is the supply in a sense. So without answering the questions precisely, one of the case study that coming up is the catchment assessment, which is the collaboration, I could say, Ministry of Water Resource Management, Water Resource and Methodology, and Ministry of Industry come together and to see how they can use a model to inform a longer term scenario for water availability. Can you move to the next slide, Paddy? Everyone understands. So this picture I'm just I was taken from the Melbourne water supply accounting. We need to really seize how much water available in the basins or in the catchment that there's a number of water users with the different demands and challenges in the catchment as a whole, or in the sub-basin, for example. We want to look at the larger scale. But the complexity is not about the hydrology itself. The complexity of water resource management is more about politics, is more about technical, is more about capacity to understand of those demands and supply, and also the capacity to negotiate and to create the dialogue between one ministry to another's. If you look at the picture at the right-hand side, I'm just taking it from the internet, but it's really reflecting pretty well in terms of so many crowded agencies. But if they look at just only one angle of the aspect of their responsibility, they will miss the whole aspect of the basin, right? So for example, the guy who carrying the fishing line, okay, I'm focusing on my fishing activity. So I want to ensure that I can fish. And the guy from urban development, they just say, okay, I really want to manage flood, make sure that the drainage in well positions or well placed. And the water guy will talk about, okay, this is my water, and I have to store my water just for purpose, serving the purpose that I want to serve my sector. But without even sitting on the same table, but without talking about the whole aspect of the basins, the whole aspect of the issues, they will create a lot of problem, conflicts, and also uncoordinated situations where everyone demand from their own perspective without properly sharings. Can you move to the next slide? This is coming to the exercise that we've done, led by, facilitated by Paradis, and also we have a colleague from ITC. I just want to give acknowledgement to them as well. I think this is something that we are trying to create the example or the case study that bringing the two ministries to look at the water issue and the demand issues, right? And I just give the background a little bit. So the World Bank has funded the government for 55 million on the water supply and sanitation improvement projects. So one of the project sites is located in Stone district that we are trying to build one water utility, including the treatment, distributions, network, and the other facility as well. So the question when we are talking about investment, we're talking about how much do we invest, right? And when we are talking about how much do we invest, there's a lot of questions from the water operator or the head of the water utility asking about concerning about the water shortage from the source that they are using right now. And upstreams of the water supply utility, there was a reservoir dam. It's called Someth 30 September Dam, which is an old traditional dam built during the Civil War. But then the question, they actually have no idea if there's no water share from the upstream to the downstream for water supply, how much water that they can get from the upstream's reservoir operator. So when they talk, they was saying that from the upstream they raised that they also have a concern of water shortage as well, because they have a number of hectares of irrigated rice fields and so on. While the downstream, the water utilities say, okay, I should find a water source, or I'm going to build the groundwater extraction stations or borehole in order to extract the water for treatment or for water supply. So this is still a long time dialogue between the operator, the two operators, the upstream dam operators and also the water utility. But there's no concrete figure or data that can show how much water available upstream and how much water that the water utility need, so that they can really ease the dialogue even better between the two line relevant agencies. So this assessment, we access the challenge of water supplies, and also we are trying to bring the two agencies to discuss together using the scientific information to have the dialogue. So at the same time, if we understand those model very well and understand how much water available, how much water they need, demand and supplies. So then it's also have the water utility to design their water supply facility and decide in terms of the size or the amount of the investment financings in Stone. Continue, please. So so this is the approach. Just quickly, they have a desk review, and also they have a team going to the field to understand and to feel the situation on the ground as well. And again, I think modeling is very important, but then the communications of non-modelers or the communications between the two dialogue agency without the background of hydrology. How can we do that, right? So then the work that we are doing, we produce the field report for them to understand what is the situations on the ground, and also modeling report. And then we also have a very crispy, easy to understand summary report, or we call it profile, so that the two agencies can really extract the data and then create the conversations between each others. Can you move to the next slide? This is not the detail, but just like trying to show a little bit 20% of the total findings for use how the model, eWater source model work to identify or access the catchments. So we access the catchment characteristic to understand the populations, the population grow in 5 years and 10 years, and also understand the demands and the size of the catchment as well. Then also we have to understand the land use and especially the land use change, which making a lot of impact and decision in terms of the water demand, and also longer term investments for the water utility. Next. The model also help in identifies the rainfall pattern data, and at the same time also understand the flow. That could really explain how much that they can calculate in a way they can, provide from the dam or the reservoir dam upstream to the utility, or we call it the raw water intake stations, for example. Next one. In the meantime, we also do some water quality as well, because water supply is really very important, and have to be careful in order to monitor the water quality, because it's also relating to the population health, and also the risk for longer term health impact of the populations. And this is the characteristic of the water utility. And also we show the map where is the location of the dam, reservoir dam, and also the distance from the dam to the water utility, and the water loss along the distribution line as well, and the demand of the water utility. And this is a comparison and trying to understand the level of water utilizations. In those catchment, the two main users is irrigated agricultures and domestic water supply. So we look at deep prioritize only the two main water users in those catchments, in that catchments. Can you move? It's just a quick snapshot for you to understand. We also identify the different source, and also trying to compare between wet and dry seasons, the level of runoff and the level of the water demands from different water users. Move to the next one. Yeah, so it's also giving some perspective for the water utility that the water scarcity might happen in the dry season. So this is really a peak season, the risky season that the water utility have to really negotiate with the Department of Water Resource, for example, or the dam operator to understand exactly how much that the upstream reservoir can release the water downstream, so that they can really have enough water to supply. And the finding you can see is here, just quickly, the water supply demand is quite low comparing to the agricultures or for irrigation. It's just like 1 or 2%. But without understanding this, I think the conversation and the dialogue would not be happen, because they don't have the data to support in the dialogue. Move to the next one. In the modelings of the eWater source, we also do the analysis of the scenario in 5 years, 10 years, and then we also do a cross-step or triangulate with some of the other scenario in terms of the future development in those catchment as well. So currently the catchment have a very little development because the population is not so condensed at these times, and also the other development, for example, industries was not really so much happenings there. So we give some scenario in terms of present condition, past conditions, if those developments, what happened, and so on. And also include the climate change scenario as well. So this scenario also divided into 3 groups so that the 2 agencies. And at the same time, I think it's very important for the World Bank as well. When they put the investment and support, finance the government, we have to think about how much money available and what could be done to brings more access to the finance in the future if we want to scale it up. Please continue. This is some climate change scenario using some data, existing data from the existing stations or rainfall. So I understood that from the team, they use different, source of information from remote sensing, satellite imagery, and then validate with the ground data as well. So we kind of like trying to not just only look from the sky, but also see the situation on the Earth as well. So then we can compare the real situation to the satellite versions. I don't present the detail of this finding, but just give that snapshot of how this work. And then after the modeling of the findings, after the finding presentations in the report, we also providing some recommendations to the line agency. There's a bunch in the categories, a number of category of recommendation, but I just extracted only 3 recommendations, just an example only. So, so we suggest that in order to create the dialogue understanding the water demand and water supplies, we need to adopt the scientific tool for water allocation. So it also giving the message to the line agency between MORAM and MISTI, really asking a good example to work together and using the model to inform the scientific proof rather than just providing a lot of gut feeling informations or assumptions to create the dialogue. So sometimes it's very hard to find the outcome from the dialogue without the actuals and scientific data. So the recommendation is also providing them in terms of the trends of the population grow as well, trying to explain that, okay, this is something that we need to do for the futures, not for now. And also for the operator, the dam operator, especially from the MORAM team, to understand how to manage the water storage, the reservoir, and setting up the water sharing plans, considering the whole aspect of the water users, not just only one water user, for example, agriculture alone, but also many other water users that they need to supply to. I think I finished my presentation, but I just want to give gratitude to MORAM team, Excellency Chairman Red, who participated a lot and very active engagement in providing a lot of information to the research team, and from the Ministry of Industry also participate in providing input and so on. But my final message, I think, use the modeling work for specific purpose, not use the modeling work just only for the modeling, and not for only the student or the researcher who have a lot of modeling experience, but how can we translate the modeling into the non-expert on the modeling or non-hydrologists, hydrology backgrounds. So I stop here and thanks for your
Thanks,
attention.
Mr. Virak for the presentation about the case study of using the model for water resources assessment. We have a quick questions from one upon again, and how this modeling framework can be applied to the other catchments.
Saying one upon a very good question. Actually, as I mentioned earlier, we trying to set a model, and the model I discuss a lot with Paradis when we start the the conversation or we start the assignments, that we want to set this model as a good example for many other catchment as well, right? So we're trying to convince the ministry to use the developed model to apply in other catchment as well. For example, in Cambodia, it's not just only stone catchment. There's many other catchment that the water utility right now facing water shortage. So now they're trying to carry out they're trying to map the water shortage hotspot, and then they're trying to really see how they could use the model to identify the similar situation in those hotspots. I hope I answered your question, but this is the purpose of why we create this model as an example. Don't look at the large scale and look at the narrowed down situation and the issue, and the model can really serve the purpose.
Thank you very much. I think yeah, it covered pretty very well on the question. So now we have behind the schedule. So I would like to call the next presentations. It's from Excellency Batbot Kasal, and he will share the talk on the developments of the national water resources, national decision support system in Cambodia, and how to use the DSS for the water resources planning in Cambodia. And Excellency Kasal, the floor is yours now. Excellency Kasal. Hello. Hello. It seems Excellency Kasal is still on the line, but it doesn't appear that he can share the screen. Hello, Excellency. I believe there is some technical issue at the CMNC. So Excellency just left the table and the forum. So the next agenda is the short break. So maybe we have a short break quickly, and then when Excellency is back and the technical issue is resolved, we can get a presentation from Excellency Kasal from CNMC. Thank you all the speakers for these sessions. So now we have a 5-minute break.